Hi, I'm Mary.
And I'm Katie, and this is the Housewife Did It.
Housewives of Horror Edition.
It's October!
Halloween. Last year we brought you 4 stories from the Cecil Hotel. This year we are bringing you 2 stories centered around the Salem witch trials. And it's also gearing us up for the day that we visit Salem, Massachusetts. If you are interested in Salem witch trials, Halloween, if you love Halloween, if it's freaking bats for you, then you can like, subscribe, share with your friends.
Let's do it.
Unfortunately, I have some real-time true crime for us. I really hope I say these names correctly. Rebecca Cheptegei. She was a Ugandan Olympian who competed in the long-distance running competition in Paris last month. She died in Kenya after being in critical condition with burns on 75% of her body. Her boyfriend had set her on fire at her house in the Western Trans Nzoia County of Kenya.
Wow.
Uganda's Athletic Federation made a statement on social media which read, quote, "We are deeply saddened to announce the passing of our athlete, Rebecca Cheptegei, early this morning, who tragically fell victim to domestic violence. As a federation, we condemn such acts and call for justice. May her soul rest in peace," end quote. They also confirmed that Rebecca is the 3rd elite female athlete to be murdered in Kenya in the last 3 years.
Jesus.
Yeah. Like,
that's
one
wild.
a year, but that's strange. Yeah.
Yeah.
Second thing is, I gotta talk to y'all. Stop doing this. School shooting threats have gone insane on social media this week. My school was on lockdown for 2 days. 2 fucking days. Can you imagine not being able to take 7-year-olds outdoors for 2 days? Anyway, children and teenagers across the country have been arrested for making fake threats to shoot up schools, some of which they don't even attend. They're just tagging random schools. Arrests have been made in Tennessee, Florida, South Carolina, Georgia, Indiana, and New Mexico. Just this week. One sheriff in Florida warned parents that if they couldn't get their children under control, he would raise them himself. And if they break the law by joking about school shootings, he would release their photos and names and perp walk them in front of everyone. And he did.
Oh,
to an 11-year-old.
He raised him himself?
Well, he perp walked them and made sure they got it on video.
Wild.
Because this 11-year-old was, like, posting pictures of all these, like, weapons he had. Yeah. Please stop doing that.
Yeah.
If for nothing else, for your own sake, you don't want to go to jail over a joke. Silly little joke. Sammy's my husband's school got one of the threats, and he sent me a screenshot of it. I said, I don't even know what that says. Like, it's entirely written in slang. I was like, I can't read that. And he was like, I was like, how do they know that's a threat? To be honest, I don't know what it says. But yes, please don't do that anymore.
It's not funny.
Public service announcement. Yeah, if it's a joke, it's not a good one.
I'm not laughing.
No. All right, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. In 1668, I gotta preface this. Every time I try to write a year that starts with 16, I put 19.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Time.
For the next month, we are gonna be saying 19. Oops, I meant 16.
Yep.
For sure.
Every time. I had to go back through it several times and fix them.
I'm gonna be like, in 1962, she was.
And then I'm like, did I mean 1662 or 1692? Or if I put 1968, did I mean 1998? 1668? 1698? I don't know. In 1668, English writer, philosopher, and clergyman Joseph Glanville published his work Against Modern Sadducism, in which he claimed he could prove the existence of witches and ghosts as the result of the denial of bodily resurrection and the supernatural spirits. In his writing, Glanville claimed that anyone who doubted the reality of spirits and demons also doubted the reality of God and angels. Across the pond, in the newly expanded Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1684, Increase Mather, that's his name, published his own book on witchcraft. Then in 1689, his son, Cotton Mather, went into the family business and published a book on witches himself, titled Memorable Providence Relating to Witchcrafts and Possessions.
Increase in Cotton. A
Good
bunch of
name.
guys.
Men like Joseph Glanville and Cotton Mather claimed that only ingenious men would believe in witches and apparitions. And
Except everyone should.
Right. And anyone who didn't were considered heretics. Fearful.
Heretics.
Fearful of falling to heresy. Europeans in the mid-17th century fully leaned into the belief of witches and launched a series of witch trials where mostly women were killed by hanging, burning at the stake, and strangulation. When when the witch trials in Europe began to fade out, they broke out in full hysteria in the American colonies.
What's that timeline? So, like, the Salem witch trial year that's everywhere, 1692. How long had it been going on in Europe? Do we know?
I think starting in like the 1670s.
Okay.
And starting to fade out.
Okay.
As they're beginning in Salem.
Because I feel like, from what I know, when it was happening in Salem or around Salem, like, it's a very short time period. Like, it just was a lot that was accomplished.
Yes.
But I wondered if in Europe it had been like a longer time period.
It was. Yeah. In the New World, as they call it, in Salem Village.
Modernity. Welcome. This is the modern world.
In the New World, in Salem Village, 4 young girls came forward in February of 1692 and accused several women in the community of witchcraft. 17-year-old Elizabeth Hubbard, 12-year-old Ann Putnam Jr., 11-year-old Abigail Williams, and 9-year-old Betty Parris accused these so-called witches of having caused them physical and mental harm through affliction. These afflictions were described as fits beyond the power of epilepsy or any other naturally occurring disease. That's what the doctors said. They said they're not having seizures.
It's beyond the power of seizures.
It's more than that, yeah. Over a year later, at the end of these trials, over 200 people were accused of witchcraft. 30 people were found guilty, which is actually a pretty low percentage. Out of 200. And at least 25 people were killed by hanging, torture, or from being left to die in disease-ridden jails. Today, I am going to tell you the story of the death of a mother and her infant, and the psychological torture of her daughter, who was the youngest witch accused in Salem.
Yeah.
My inspiration was Paranorman. I fucking love Paranorman. And I was like, is there a child that was accused of witchcraft? And
Mary said, can I use Paranorman as a valid source?
I did.
Please.
I did say that. I said that to you on Snapchat. So, the Salem witch trials were not the first trials of their kind in New England. The first recorded execution for the crime of witchcraft was a woman named Alcee Young in Hartford, Connecticut in 1647.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
Which served as the catalyst for the Connecticut witch trials, which ended in 1663.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What the heck?
I know. But almost exactly 30 years later, after the accusations of the 4 girls, arrests were made in Salem Village, Salem Town, Andover, and Topsfield. Salem Village, which is known in the present as the town of Danvers, Massachusetts.
Okay.
So the Salem that you know and love is
That's
not
Salem town.
That's Salem town. Yeah.
Got it.
And it's still Salem, but Salem Village, where this started, is in Danvers, Massachusetts. It was known to be a town of fairly bitter and irritating people.
Perfect.
Apparently.
Yeah. I love.
It's me. They were constantly that's so funny, like, and they're accusing the most bitter and irritating of being witches when everyone's apparently doing it. Mm-hmm. They were constantly in dispute with the nearby Salem town. They were constantly bickering with them over property lines, grazing rights, and church privileges. And finally, in 1672, the inhabitants of Salem Village voted to have their own minister, officially separating them from Salem town, because that's what makes a city. Having your own minister.
Yeah. Do you know what I think this just made me think? Is that in Klaus, that town, bitter and irritating, they need to make a Halloween movie, because like they could do some things with that village.
True. The first 3 ministers of the new Salem Village did not work out because the congregation was not able to pay them. But they eventually decided that their first ordained minister would be Samuel Parris. On June 18th, 1689, the year of our Lord and Savior Taylor Swift, Salem Village offered to pay Samuel Parris €66 a year, 1/3 part in money, and the other 2/3 part in provisions.
Okay.
And along with his payment, he also had use of the rectory for him and his family.
Okay. So we got housing.
Yeah, that's in June. In October of the same year, the villagers decided they would raise Parris's benefits, offering him the deed to the rectory home and 2 acres of land.
Wow.
Which was risky because there was a village resolution from 1681 which stated, quote, this is 8 years later, stated, quote, "It shall not be lawful for the inhabitants of this village to convey the houses or lands or any other concerns belonging to the ministry to any particular persons or person, not for any cause by vote or other ways," end quote. It is very clear.
So it has to stay public property.
It has to say like property of the ministry. Sure. You can't sell an individual person the rectory.
Like if you sold the archdiocese directory to the bishop instead of just letting it stay. Got it.
Right. Despite the villagers sticking their necks out for their new minister, he delayed his response. He said, "I need to think about that." On top of this, he kind of began to gain a reputation for being a harsh minister. He was said to make parishioner disputes worse instead of better. So if they were arguing, he would kind of fuel the fire. He would go out of his way to find members of the congregation committing even the smallest of infractions and then force them to take public penance for them.
He just loves gossip.
He's always alert. Mm-hmm. Historian. I wrote history. Historian, it's a person, Marion Starkey, who wrote The Devil in Massachusetts, a modern inquiry into the Salem witch trials, suggested that in the atmosphere of bickering and tension, it was inevitable that a serious conflict would arise. Mm-hmm. That they were going to have to blame it on someone. So there it is, 1962. The first.
But what does it mean? 1692?
The first set of trials was held in 1692 by a court of oyer and terminer in Salem town. The first 3 women to be accused of the capital crime of witchcraft in these trials were Sarah Osborne, Sarah Good, and an enslaved Native American. Has been disputed whether she was Native American, Afro-Caribbean, African American, but in most sources she's referred to as Indian. So This is my guess. And in the pictures, she does appear Native American. Like she's got like Native American dress on.
Sure.
A woman named Tituba.
Mm-hmm. It's so hard because the pictures are like
drawings. Yeah. Once the girls had come forth with their stories of having been bitten, pinched, pricked with pins, and abused via witchcraft, they became even more obviously afflicted. They would have fits where they went into convulsions, rolled their eyes into the backs of their heads, made strange sounds, screamed, crawled under furniture, threw things around the room, contorted themselves into strange and uncomfortable positions, and hung their mouths open. During one of these fits, Reverend Samuel Parris, who was the father of one accuser, Betty Parris, and the uncle of another accuser, Abigail Williams, called out to the girls, "Who torments you?" Mm-hmm.
We'll tell you.
And this is when they gave the names of Tituba, Sarah Osborne, and Sarah Good. So, my story is about Sarah Good and her daughters, I should say. Sarah Good was born Sarah Solart in 1653, which I do want to clarify would make her 39 at the time of her trial, to a fairly wealthy tavern owner named John Solart. When Sarah was 17 years old, John Solart died by suicide. He left behind a 70-acre estate, which was valued at around £500, which was very difficult to convert, 1, to US dollars, and 2, to a current time currency. So my best estimate is that the estate was valued at about like $60,000.
Okay.
However, due to the fact that Sarah was her father's daughter and not his son, she would not see a cent of her inheritance. It was instead divided among Sarah's mother and her 2 brothers, and she and her 6 sisters were left with no money and no dowry to be used to find husbands with. Sarah's only prospect, I have no money, no prospects. Her only prospect for marriage was to an indentured servant named Daniel Poole. And he died soon after they were married. And the only thing she got out of their marriage, because remember, her mom got all that stuff from her dad. The only thing Sarah got from her marriage to Daniel Poole was a whole lot of debt.
Oh, great.
She remarried, and she and her new husband, William Good, sold the little land they had, which didn't really give them any money at all. And they had to use what they did have to pay off her former husband's debt. So they were left with no home and completely in poverty. It was a pretty well-known fact in the community that Sarah Good was not a very pleasant woman to interact with. In most depictions of the Salem witch trials, Sarah Good is portrayed as a bitter old hag.
Oh.
Yeah.
At 39 years old.
Right. She's got like wrinkles, white hair, she's like hunched over. In reality, she could not have been that old, because she was pregnant.
Yes.
She is shown with, like I said, wrinkles, white hair, hunched over, like, she took to begging from the households in Salem to provide for her family, and Samuel Parris claimed that she once walked off muttering under her breath about him when he offered her charity. Bitch.
Rude.
Yeah. His wife, Mary Abby Parris, offered Sarah a place to stay at their home for a time, and said of Sarah, quote, "She was so turbulent a spirit, spiteful and so maliciously bent, that she could not stay with them any longer." She couldn't let them stay. She was so crazy.
Turbulent.
Even Sarah's own husband called her an enemy to all good.
Oh.
Yeah, that might be worse than Kyle Cook.
Yeah. I love her. We are kindred spirits.
Yeah. Sarah's relationship with her second husband became a big part of her trial. William testified that he had grown to suspect and fear that his wife was a witch because she did not have a pleasant demeanor toward him, and she did not hold up the expectations he had for her as a wife. Which, I mean, obviously, witch. That's all it takes. Yeah. Neighbors found it alarming that Sarah seemed to challenge Puritan values and refused to attend church, which she said was due to the fact that she didn't feel she had anything suitable to wear because she was impoverished and homeless. She was like, what am I going to wear to church?
And y'all are going to make fun of me.
Right.
Guaranteed.
Traditionally, the Massachusetts colonies and their government was led by conservative Puritans. The whole reason they had left Europe in the first place was because, while they believed in the Reformed Christianity of Calvinism, they felt that the Church of England was leaning too far into Catholicism. Puritans disagreed with the Anglican Church's use of the Book of Common Prayer, clergy vestments, the sign of the cross, and kneeling to receive communion, and as a result, they fled to the Netherlands and North America. So the whole reason they're here is because of religion. However, by the time of the Salem witch trials, some colonies were beginning to branch away from Puritan culture. I know. In the early 1640s, a civil war struck England that resulted in less English citizens seeking refuge in other countries for religious reasons, because they could be any religion they wanted at the end of that civil war.
Sure.
Okay. And so in Massachusetts, the effect it had was that the new settlers that did come were less motivated to move to the colonies for religious reasons and more just because they wanted to live there. Yeah. Which did not sit well with the earlier settlers who were there to seek refuge from religious persecution.
Sure.
Women in New England bore the brunt of the puritanical beliefs that had been the foundation of the new colonies.
Mormons.
Puritan beliefs stated that women were inherently sinful and were more susceptible to damnation than men because of this, Puritan women were constantly faced with the task of having to fight off attempts by the devil to claim their souls.
It's that Eve
That's
thing.
A big job. That's
constantly being offered apples.
It's too much for anyone to bear. Yeah. Puritans believed that weak and vulnerable women, not women who were weak and vulnerable, that women, all women, were weak and vulnerable.
Yes.
Were unable to protect themselves from the devil's vices. And women...
So how are they not all witches?
Right. They're so weak and fragile that men are big and strong. The devil, he don't want big. He don't want to come for big and strong. Yeah. It's the same reason that women are, more unsafe.
Yeah.
Everywhere. And so, in fact, this is actually a pretty progressive belief.
Yeah.
So women, especially women who didn't conform to the social standards of being meek and demure, marrying or bearing children, were easy targets to accuse of witchcraft because they were so tiny. They're so skinny legends that the devil could get into them. So, on March 25th, 1692, Sarah Good was accused of rejecting the puritanical expectations of self-control and discipline by possessing 2 women and choosing to torment and scorn children when she should have been leading them toward the path to salvation.
She should have.
This is a big job.
It's crazy how much we trust women. when they're so weak, vulnerable, and sinful.
I know, this is crazy. She was tried for witchcraft, and when she was brought in for the beginning of her trial, the 4 accusers began to rock back and forth and moan, and one fell into a full fit of seemingly involuntary convulsions. When the girl finally stopped convulsing, she claimed that Sarah Good had attacked her with a knife.
Right then?
Yep. And she pulled out a portion of a knife as evidence.
It sounds like you got the murder weapon, girl.
As the court was listening in on the trial, one young man stood up and he told the court that he had been using his knife the day before and it broke, and this girl had been there and seen it. And so then he pulls out the rest of the knife. This man is the only person who made any attempt to defend Sarah Good against her accusers. Not even her own fucking husband.
Great.
Just as random ass dude. And instead of the court realizing that this meant that the girl was lying, they believed her story and simply thought that the knife was an exaggeration. So they said, please just stick to the facts.
Okay.
And the trial carried on. They said, we know she attacked you with the knife, but you didn't have to pull out a knife for us to believe you. We would have believed you anyway. In another part of the trial, Tituba claimed that a tall man dressed in all black came to Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and herself and demanded that the three sign their names in what he referred to as the Great Book. Tituba said at first that she refused, but after Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne signed it, they forced Tituba to sign it as well.
Was she one of their slaves?
I think she was I think she was the Parris's slave.
Oh.
Maybe. I know she is featured in The Crucible. And they do explain who she lived with in The Crucible, but I can't remember. I think it's definitely one of the accusers though.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But by signing the book, Tituba said, all three women were committing to becoming the devil's servants. She also said that there were 6 names above theirs in the book, but she could not make them out. She didn't know who they were.
She said, I ain't the first.
Yeah, she's...
Go find those people.
I didn't even want to do this. They made me. And apparently it's not that uncommon.
I am but one of 9.
Yeah. It's just because I'm so skinny. Ozempic, baby. Got the devil in me now. So Tituba also testified against Sarah Good that she had used animals to attack the girls like familiars. So familiars are small animals that are believed to be companions to witches, which can use their own magical powers in accordance with their witches. So Tituba claimed that Sarah Good ordered a cat to scratch and bite Elizabeth Hubbard, and that she sent several black and yellow birds to attack the girls. In fact, as Tituba was testifying, the accusers went back into convulsions, and Tituba announced that she saw a yellow bird in Sarah Good's right hand as the girls were undergoing their fit. My question is, if she's using the birds to attack them, why is she holding it?
And how'd she get a bird in the courtroom? They just let her bring it in there? Yeah, the bird... I assume that the point is that the familiars do like actual physical attacks.
Right.
So it would need to get over there.
Also, like she's saying, like the cats scratched them. How is this bird making them have a seizure? Anyway. And why can't she do that on her own? I don't know. When the girls came out of their hysterics, they told the court that they also saw Sarah Good holding the bird. Despite the girls' claims of these attacks by animals being ongoing, a doctor in the case found no physical evidence of any ailments or injuries on any of the girls. And 284 years later, many of the symptoms the accusers displayed were thought to be caused by convulsive ergot poisoning, also called ergotism. There are several like now known ailments that people say could have been it, but they said that this one, it's not. It seems like the convulsions were because of that. I think they were just playing. Cotton Mather himself wrote to one of the judges, John Richards, to let him know how thankful he was for the prosecution of women in Salem.
Thank you.
But he also warned him of potential risks, stating, quote, "Do not lay more stress on pure spectral evidence than it will bear. It is very certain that the devils have sometimes represented the shapes of persons not only innocent, but also very virtuous. Though I believe that the just God then ordinarily provides a way for speedy vindication of the persons thus abused." End quote. Spectral evidence
Was he
was
just saying, like, we could be fooled, the devil can, like...
Yes.
I don't,
so I'm gonna explain it in a second.
Okay.
So spectral evidence, which is what he's talking about, was what almost all of the witch trials in Salem were based off of. Spectral evidence is a form of legal evidence based on testimony of the afflicted victims who claim to experience visions or see the apparition or shape of the person causing them harm.
Okay.
AKA hearsay.
Mm-hmm.
But spooky.
Mm-hmm.
Spectral evidence did have some people that doubted it. So basically, and this is like what he's saying, some people wondered if it was fair to use spectral evidence against proposed witches when they weren't able to prove that the witches gave permission to the devil to have their shape be afflicted. So that's what he's saying, is that women are so weak and tiny that the devil could have entered them without their permission.
So, like, some of them signed their names over.
Right.
They said, I want to do this. But he's like, fuck.
Not
it
everyone.
Could just get into my daughter.
Right.
And I don't want you to kill her.
Yes. And so he's saying the devil can take the shape of persons not only innocent, but also very virtuous. But he says, typically, they're vindicated so quickly. Like, we would know, but just be careful. However, the legal court determined that the devil could not use a person's shape without their permission.
Oh.
Easy. So spectral evidence was
against
admitted.
The law, and the devil follows the rules.
Right. So spectral evidence was admitted into the trials and pretty much solely used. Nothing else. Even the royal family of witch hunting, Increase and Cotton Mather, wrote about the trial again and tried to entice the court to use more than spectral evidence to convict witches. And eventually,
said, please God, this is going to come back to hurt us.
Yeah. Eventually, the court did deem spectral evidence inadmissible, but not before all of these women were convicted and killed because of it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
What was their, you may tell me, but like, what is their plan to use after that? Like, does there have to be like physical evidence?
I don't know. I think it was well later that they decided, like, wait, we can't just say this. And
cool.
I think it was after they realized these girlies were lying. While the court was taking in evidence about Sarah Good and her witchcraft, they were also investigating the accusation of her daughter, Dorothy, who goes by Dorcas. So I'll call her. Yep. And unfortunately, that's what I have to call her because there's another Dorothy later.
Who did this to
her? Her witch of a mother. That's the witchcraft. She said.
That's what makes her so awful.
Yeah. Dorcas had been accused by Ann Putnam Jr. and Mary Walcott, who claimed that Dorcas was deranged and had repeatedly bitten them like an animal.
Oh.
Dorcas Good was the youngest person to be arrested for witchcraft during the Salem witch trials. At only 4 years old, she was questioned by local magistrates about her and her mother's practicing witchcraft.
Of course she bit you.
She's 4.
A toddler.
When they asked Dorcas about her involvement in afflicting the Puritan girls, Dorcas admitted to being a witch.
She said,
and
sounds
claimed,
fun.
Yes,
I love this game.
One time our cousin, who is I think also 4, she asked me, she said, "Hey, here's a question. Do you have magical powers?" And I said, "No." And she said, "I do." 4-year-olds just be saying that shit. She's 4. So she claimed that she had seen her mother speaking with the devil. During Dorcas's hearing, the accusers sat in the court and continuously complained of bites on their in her hearing. In the hearing of a 4-year-old, these girls continuously complained of bites on their arms. In another interrogation, Dorcas told the Salem officials that her mother had given her a snake as a pet and that she was able to talk to it, and it allowed it and she allowed it to suck blood from her finger.
She's just Harry Potter.
The officials were certain that Dorcas was admitting to having a familiar.
It does kind of sound that way.
Dorcas Good was arrested on March 24th, 1692, and remained in custody until December 10th of that year, when she was released on bond for 50 euros. Dorcas was never indicted or tried for witchcraft, but Reverend Deodat Lawson, first name Deodat Lawson, a British-American minister in Salem Village, did release a statement of the examinations conducted by the magistrates, which read, quote, "The magistrates and ministers also did inform me that they apprehended a child of Sarah G. and examined it, being between 4 and 5 years of age, and as to matter of fact, they did unanimously affirm that when this child but did cast its eye upon the afflicted persons, they were tormented, and they held her head, and yet so many as her eye could fix upon were afflicted. They held her head, but she could move her eyes, and every time she looked at someone, they got afflicted. When they did several times make careful observation of the afflicted complained they had been often been bitten by this child, and produced the marks of a small set of teeth. Accordingly, this was also committed to Salem prison. The child looked hale and well as other children. I saw it at I don't know, Ingersoll's. I think that's a person. After the commitment of Good in, though Putnam's wife was much better and had no violent fits at all from that 24th of March to the 5th of April. Some others
while she was detained, they're saying,
yes.
See, no one was hurt while she was okay.
Some others also said they had not seen her so frequently appear to them to hurt them. On the 26th of March, Mr. Hawthorne, Mr. Corwin, and Mr. Higgison were at the prison keeper's house to examine the child. The child told them there it had a little snake that used to suck on the lowest joint of her forefinger. When they inquired where, pointing to other places, the child told them not there, but there, pointing to the lowest point of the forefinger, where they observed a deep red spot about the bigness of a flea bite.
Probably
Snakes have 2 tooths.
Sure.
Finally, end quote. Sorry.
Why do they call her it over and over again?
Finally, Sarah Good herself took the stand. She claimed that she was innocent and that it was actually Tituba and Sarah Osborne who were witches. Reverend Nicholas Noyes made several attempts to get Sarah Good to confess, but she was adamant in her innocence. Instead, she yelled at Noyes, quote, "I'm no more a witch than you are a wizard, and if you take away my life, God will give you blood to drink." End quote. At the end of her trial, Sarah Good was found guilty, convicted of witchcraft, and sentenced to death. On July 19th, 1692, Dorcas Good watched as her mother was led to her death and was hanged alongside 4 other accused witches. When Sarah Good was initially arrested, she was pregnant, so she did receive a temporary stay of execution, She gave birth to a baby girl that she named Mercy.
Cute.
In her jail cell in Ipswich, but the infant did not survive, likely due to malnourishment. And Dorcas Good had to watch her mother give birth and watch her newborn sister die in that cell.
Oh, so she was still in there?
Yeah.
So after she watched her mother die,
she
was still in there till December.
Yeah.
By herself. Aww.
Yep. In the aftermath of Sarah Good's trial in 1710, William Good, who said his wife was a witch, sued the Great and General Court for health and mental damages against his wife and daughter. That's bold, sir. After Dorcas
didn't defend her not once.
Yeah. After Dorcas was released at the age of 5, she was severely psychologically disturbed.
Duh.
So, William Good won the lawsuit and was awarded 30 pounds sterling, which came to be one of the largest sums granted to the families of the Salem witch trial victims. Dorcas was sent to live with Benjamin Putnam from 1708 to 1715, and then she moved in with Nathaniel and Hannah Putnam.
Are they related to the Putnam who was accusing her mother?
I think so.
Great.
Toward the end of 1720, Dorcas was transient and gave birth to a daughter out of wedlock, whom she named Dorothy Good Jr.
Okay, Lorelai Gilmore.
I know. In 1722, Dorothy Jr. became an indentured servant to Nathaniel Putnam. She's 2. She was born in 1720.
What?
It's 1722.
What can she do for you?
She became an indentured servant to Nathaniel Putnam, and Dorcas was to be sent to his brother-in-law Robert's home. But before she made it to Robert Hutchinson's property, Dorcas was sent to a workhouse in Salem where she stayed for 18 weeks.
I just got whiplash.
That means she was arrested.
Oh, okay.
She returned to the workhouse in
For what? What are they becoming indentured servants for? What are they getting? This is crazy.
I know. And she was there for 18 weeks. Then she returned to the workhouse in 1725, and this time Robert Hutchinson paid for her release. By the time
I really need you to come work for me.
By the time she got out of the House of Corrections, she was pregnant again, either from before or during her imprisonment, which is
not great.
Problem.
Not great.
In June of 1725, Dorcas gave birth to William Good in Concord, Massachusetts, and the two were taken in by Nathaniel Billing. She ended up returning to Salem, where she lived a sort of nomadic lifestyle and moved from house to house. At one point, she went back to live with Nathaniel Putnam, and then she later moved in with Jonalyn Batchelder, who had actually testified against Sarah Good in 1692 when he was 14 years old.
You said Jonalyn.
I did? Jonathan Batchelder, who had testified against Sarah Good in 1692 when he was 14 years old.
Jeez.
William Good became an indentured servant to Jonathan Batchelder. Dorcas lived... I know.
I'm not understanding.
Yeah. Dorcas lived with Batchelder until 1738 when she suddenly disappeared from all records.
She got.
It's not confirmed what happened to her, but on August 14th, 1761, a woman named Dorothy Good was found dead in a bog meadow outside of New London, Connecticut. If this is the body of Dorothy Good Sr., she would have been 73 years old at the time of her death. My thought is, how do you know it's a woman named Dorothy Good if you're not sure which one it is? If you can point out that it's Dorothy Good, you know who it is.
You don't know her age range, but you know her name?
Right.
Did she have an ID on her?
Right. Finally, a fun little legend. Do you remember 2 paragraphs ago, I mentioned Reverend Nicholas Noyes, and he's the one that Sarah Good said, I'm no more a witch than you're a wizard, and God's going to make you taste blood. or something. Apparently, 25 years after the trial of Sarah Good, he died from choking on his own blood.
Whoa.
So, maybe Sarah Good was a witch. And maybe she was not predicting that God would give him blood to drink, but was promising it.
Mm-hmm. Or God's just on their side. He said,
yeah.
Wait, that's a good idea. Thank you. I'm going to work on that.
Leave these women alone.
Yeah.
That's it.
Crazy. That's crazy.
I know. 4 years old.
Yeah. That's wild.
I can't imagine answering any kind of questions at 4 years old.
No. I'd be like, it would be fun if I had a pet snake that talked to me.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll have another witchy episode in 2 weeks. Happy Halloween.
Yay. Bye.
Bye.